Hello, welcome to Pints and Quarts, a show presented by Craft Beer Nation. Today is May 21st, 2015. Our guest this week needs little introduction. He is the Walker half of Firestone Walker Brewing Company. You would be foolish to turn away from your screen for the next little while, as we will get into all kinds of beer talk with David in just a few minutes. This show is sponsored by the good people at craftbeveragejobs.com. Type that into the browser if you're looking to start or advance your career in the craft beer industry. Seriously, it is a legit jobs website. Just do that after we're done talking to David. So get that beer in a glass and get comfortable. While the music's playing, this would be a perfect time to click subscribe on our YouTube, Stitcher, or iTunes channels.
Time now for a look back at the last week in the craft beer industry. Pour a cold one and sit back for an all-new episode of Pints and Quarts, presented by Craft Beer Nation.
Well, thanks for tuning in this week, everyone. We've got a full panel of people here that wanted to turn out and talk with David. So some of the regulars, some of the irregulars, and some of the really irregulars. We've got Randy, Lola, Doug, Charles, Gil, Ashley, myself, Matt Miller, and, of course, David Walker. David, thanks for joining with us tonight. And tell us, how are you on this evening?
Pretty good. Very good.
Well, good. Well, we're glad to hear that. We'd like to start the conversation off with the softball kind of question that you probably answer every time anyone talks to you about your past. But tell us about how you got into beer and how Firestone Walker became a thing.
Jeez, how long have I got? All right. Well, we're a classic family business. My partner Adam at Firestone and I are related through marriage, and I was growing grapes in the Santa Ynez Valley, and he was running a third-generation family winery. We couldn't talk the winery into starting a craft brewery, so we decided to start it ourselves. We licensed the family name and created the Firestone Walker Brewing Company, and then that was 20 years ago. And basically struggled and did what everybody else did. Told our story along with, at that time, 400 other breweries, and just sort of slowly made progress.
Now,
and
your accent says that California isn't your place of origin. So where?
Exactly. I wound up here. I started out in England, southwest of England, in a county called Devon, a little seaside. Anyway, yeah, I'm a long way from here. So
that sounds like a Morrissey song. I think you wrote
yeah, right. Yeah, Morrissey wasn't from Devon.
Some other seaside town then.
Right. No. So yeah, and after a while, the world woke up to craft beer, and we've been holding on ever since. And it's a fabulous thing.
I think you're doing more than holding on. I think you're holding it down. I mean, yeah. I'm here in Virginia, and I see more of your beer than some of the local companies out here. How many barrels of beer did you guys produce and ship last year?
We just over 200,000 barrels. We sell most of our beer in California, and then most of the rest of our beer in the collar states around California. We made a decision about 4 or 5 years ago to ship some of our high-end beers, some of the beers you guys are drinking, some of the more robust, the barley wines, the one with real broad shoulders. We decided to ship them to the East Coast and make them available in what we thought were food-forward markets, and that sort of got out of hand a little bit, and so we started to send more beer, and it's a clumsy solution to an East Coast problem, and we're still working on that. Because as you all know, the sweetest beer, the freshest beer, the best beer is the beer closest to the brewery, and we are 3,000 miles from Virginia.
I was trying to place what's your flagship beer, and I look at your lineup. I couldn't figure out I couldn't guess which is your flagship. Do you actually have a flagship beer, or
we
kind of even?
Yeah, we used to have flagship beers, but that sort of doesn't. I mean, it does exist, but it's we're sort of part of this sort of artisanal revolution that's going on, and the very nature of that is sort of being curious and so forth. So, we started out, DBA was, when we started our brewery, we thought we'd really only ever make DBA, a beautiful English pale ale that goes through primary fermentation in American oak barrels, and but things soon changed. So for the longest time, DBA was our flagship, and then it moved to Union Jack. And now we have a local beer that we make a local beer here called 805, and that's enormous. So that probably is our largest beer. And now Easy Jack is sort of starting to storm the ramparts as well. So we make a lot of different beers, and we're happy about that.
So speaking of getting your beer to the East Coast, what kind of challenges are you guys facing in California right now as far as the your brewery in particular, as far as the drought is concerned? I mean, if you're gonna send more beer back east, you gotta brew more beer back west, which means more water. So what type of challenges are you facing there?
Yeah, it's a good question, Randy. I mean, there's 25 and 30% mandatory reductions in business use of water. And although California brewers, I mean, they use a lot of water, but ultimately they use a very small amount of water when you compare it to other areas. Agriculture is the classic one. I mean, agriculture I think uses about 80% of the water in California. It needs it, but it's not so much water that's the issue. It's the politics of water.
Okay.
I mean, as a brewer, if you go to your local community, and as brewers, you have a relationship with your community. I mean, we know our city managers, and if you walk into the local city council and say, "Hey, we'd like to expand our brewery," it's a public forum. I mean, someone might stick their hand in the air and say, "Hey, they just turned off the sprinklers in my lawn and my golf course. Why should I let a brewery expand?" So the politics of water are an issue, but fingers crossed. We're in a great community in the Central Coast of California. I mean, it's a wine country area. It's an agricultural area. I mean, I think they understand some of the realities of water, and so far we've not had any issues. But if we continue to have more drought, there'll be more issues.
So, well, with the water restrictions coming down from the level of the governor on down, given those climatic conditions, are there any plans for East Coast expansion? It seems to be a thing now with that.
Yeah.
With the water issue especially. So, you guys have any plans for that?
We thought about that, and functionally, I mean, like I said, it's close to 80% of our beer is made in California, and so really, if we build a brewery on the East Coast, it would make no sense shipping all the beer home. My sense is, we're working on solutions, and obviously diversifying our current reliance on this area is probably the top of that. But, there are rainier areas closer to our brewery than the
Touche. Touche.
But, some of my friends have come your way. The guys from Stone, I think the guys from Green Flash are heading to Virginia as well.
Yeah.
We're in Virginia already.
Shoots.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a lot of activity. Listen, it makes a lot of sense if you sell beer in those markets in large volume. I wish we did, but we don't.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's one thing you guys do in volume is like, I know barrel age is a big thing right now, but you guys are no stranger to barrel aging, right? Is a barrel that your barrel works? Was about the same time you started the brewery? Did you start this early on, or is this an idea that just came later in time?
No, here's the weird thing. When we started the brewery 20 years ago, because we were sort of surrounded by winemakers, and my partner came out of the wine business, we immediately integrated oak barrels into our process. We were just screwing around at that time, and we quickly formalized it to create this to mimic the Burton Unions of the Burton-upon-Trent area. So we've had barrels within our brewery for a long time, and that was not a natural thing for a brewer to do, and especially in primary fermentation. I mean, we weren't looking for any funk. We didn't want any funk, and we didn't want any aging. I mean, the beer, double barrel ale, goes through primary fermentation partially. Some of it goes through primary fermentation for about 5 days in barrels. But that evolution just sort of kept barrels bouncing around in the brewery for a long time, and that led to barrel aging. Matt Brynelson, the mind behind our beers, he's been rolling all sorts of funny, weird barrels in the brewery for a long time. Tequila barrels, bourbon barrels, port barrels, brandy barrels, and what we decided to do actually with our 10th anniversary was to create a beer aged in those barrels and release it. And at the time, other than Goose Island, no one was really doing that. And it became interesting to people, which surprised us. And so we made another one, the 11, and then we made another one. And then before we knew it, we were releasing the components that we blended to create those anniversaries. And after a while, we sat up and said, "Hey, this barrel thing's important. Let's give it a name." So we called it the Barrel Works, which then came further confused in as much as we started to get into wild and sort of lambic style beers. And so we created a whole separate facility about an hour south of our main brewery, where we just make sort of lambic and wild ales, and that truly is what we call the Barrel Works.
Far enough away that none of the yeast can float back and contaminate.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Are you still using the Burton Union method or something like it?
That's a good question, actually. I mean, we do use it. We went out and patented this gadget, and we audaciously called it the Firestone Union. I don't know what we were thinking. But we actually have a patent on it, and it was literally supposed to mimic the sort of the swan necks and the barn backs that were integrated into the classic Burton Unions, and you can see them. You go to Marston's right now, and you can walk through those Union halls in Burton-upon-Trent, and it will blow you away. I mean, it's the most amazing experience. You walk on a football field of Unions, and the beer is sort of effervescing and fermenting around you. I mean, it's just an extraordinary experience. So we tried to recreate that, and we realized that we weren't going to ever get to that scale. So we ended up getting rid of the contraption and pinning it to the wall in one of our pubs for people to look at. And but now what we do is we just have this huge cellar program, just like one of our wineries, just like any one of the wineries in the area, where we'll have scores of barrels lined up, and we'll put beer in, we'll put DBA in those barrels, and it'll go through primary fermentation, but it'll just basically effervesce into a steel bucket. It won't be recycled back and placed back into the system. But ultimately, we're still getting three great characteristics out of that barrel. First of all, it goes through a much more athletic fermentation, and I've been told the yeast reacts differently, and then or gives out different characteristics to the beer. Secondly, it picks up real oak flavor. Whereas the old Burton Unions, or the Burton Unions in Marston's now, I mean, they're coated, so they're really not designed. And also the barrels are there for years, 20, 30 years. Our barrels we ditch after about 6 months. And that gives it a that gives it a nice sort of oak flavor. It's just it's almost tannic. It's just, you can just pick it up in the back of your palate. And the final thing is the effervescing, I've been told, sort of miles out the hop a little bit, which is what you want with an English pale ale. So that's it. Yeah, but our barrels are bubbling every day, just not the way they were supposed to. That was a long answer.
English pales are usually one of my favorites.
So you have your barrels all connected, or they're like individual, just?
Yeah, I mean that's where we changed, and we stopped interconnecting. And obviously that's one of the key things about Union is the barrels are sort of moving from one barrel to the next. We've sort of abandoned that, and I think the result is just as interesting and flavors are just as dynamic, but it's it's sort of fascinating. One of the early GABFs we went to a lifetime ago, when GABF was a little bit like some sort of homebrewers convention, and Michael Jackson swung by our booth, and we sort of talked him through what we were doing, and he gave us a nod. He said, this has the characteristic. Actually, the words he used was fart quality of a union, and so we knew we were getting something right. But it's very different. It's very different to the Burton unions of, that are in Marston's.
So after he made that remark and walked away, did you guys high five like there was no tomorrow? I mean, you can impress.
We were so naive. I mean, we had no idea the prominence of Michael Jackson. I mean, he was just sort of another English guy to me. I mean, everybody in England who's interested in beer looks like Michael Jackson. I mean, he was the pin-up boy for camera. And I just sort of assumed he was another sort of camera guy who was going to give us a hard time about, serving our beer with CO2. But no, I mean, obviously he's an amazing fellow.
So what's next? I mean, where do you go from here? I mean, we look forward to the releases every year of the particular beers. You've got the year-round stuff that we can't get enough of here on the East Coast. But what's next? I mean, where's the innovation? Where are you going to take it?
Innovation. That's that's tattooed on our foreheads at the moment. I mean, we're serving two masters here at the moment. The first master is we've created beers that northern people in this forum like. So people who've never really experienced craft beer and are just, they've just decided they don't want to drink American light lagers anymore, and they feel a bit of a putz ordering it at the bar. So they're experimenting, and it's this sort of torrent of new consumers, and they're interested in DBA, Easy Jack. They're interested in 805, and they're filling our order books. And so we're having to behave like real brewers, because now we've sort of we poked the bear, and the bear woke up and sort of said, yeah, we like craft beer too. And so that's the first part of being a sort of a regional brewer like us. I mean we're on target to have to brew 300,000 barrels of beer this year, which is an extraordinary amount. I mean, we only brewed 200 last year. So that piece of the puzzle is trying to grow up and behave like a real brewer. And then the other side is the sort of what we feel instinctively, which is what we want to do. We constantly want to do interesting things and sort of fiddle around. So in some ways, I mean, the Barrel Works fills that, really. The Barrel Works enables us to innovate both on the wild side with wild ales and also on the aging side. And so there's a lot coming out in that area. And we're going to release Hell Dorado here in the next month. And Hell Dorado is one of the component beers. It's a blonde barley wine, but it's a component beer that we use as part of our anniversary. And on a broad basis, you might, in fact, on the East Coast, you will see it. We're going to release a Grestic, which is which is one of the beers from our wild ale portfolio. But next year, we're looking at different hopping regimes, and just continuing to sort of add to the lineup. I mean, we only had a discussion about it a couple of weeks ago, so I don't want to really sort of get ahead of it. But we're going to continue to innovate. Yeah.
I swear, when you said aggressive, Gil Mello's heart skipped a beat when you said aggressive on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you'll get some.
He was just talking today about how he was trying to find that beer.
I just put a post saying, if anybody finds aggressive, and just give me a shout.
I will pay you anything.
Well, we make 2,500 cases. Well, we're planning on making somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 cases, depending on the yield, and it's going to go into our broader distribution, and so you don't have to line up at the brewery to buy it. It should show up somewhere.
There's two beers there, right? That what's the other sour? I'm trying to remember.
Barrel one.
La Rustic. No, what's it? La Rustica. Rustica. Agrestic, right?
There's Agrestic, Sour Opal, Little Opal, Feral 1.
Yeah, no, Little Opal.
Feral
I got a
Red.
bottle. That's yeah.
We actually have a
I won't
question. We actually have a question from one of our viewers, and his name is Antonio Barunda, and he is always in the craft beer community where we all sourced from.
The guy who gave me that.
Yeah, there you go. He's the one who gave him. He wants to know how you guys transport unfermented wort an hour away to your wild facility.
With great difficulty and great care. So.
Like
You know,
is it like in the back of your Volkswagen, or I mean?
Yeah, something like that. No, I mean, wine guys do it a lot. I mean, there's these little sort of 500-gallon totes that you can drop a forklift on and move them around. And I mean, just to give you an idea, and this might make you feel better, Gil. I mean, if we produce 1,500 barrels of wild ales, I mean that's a huge target for us this year. So. We're not moving around a huge amount of wort or beer as part of this program, and we've got close to 1,500 barrels down there. It's in fact, I probably can walk you into the barrel works. But would I screw up this whole Google WA thing? If I did
probably so. Why don't we save that for the end of the show?
All right, good, okay.
Although we have seen some pretty awesome things after the Hangouts ended other places too with other breweries too. Let's take a quick a break here. We'll talk about our sponsor, and then we'll get to some of the news stories from tonight. Our sponsor is craftbeveragejobs.com, and the job of the week this week is, I guess, what do they say, Ashley? The most important thing of brewing is?
Sanitation.
Yeah, cleaning and sanitation. So there's a company out there that I have not ever heard of called Zep Superior Solutions. And they've been making food product for industrial kind of cleaning solutions, and now they are getting into craft beer because everybody is. But Zep Craft Brewing Solutions is they've got they're hiring a sales manager for the what looks like Seattle, Washington area. So if you want to sell cleaning supplies to breweries. And actually, I say cleaning supplies, but it's actually cleaning systems like plant sanitations and microbial control systems and computerized dispensing equipment. That kind of sounds like fillers there, but the craftbeveragejobs.com is the place to check that job out. Load up your resume and post. So thank you to craftbeveragejobs.com. Let's get right back to the news though. Lola, start us out.
I have to get ready to celebrate. In a little over a month, I'm supposed to go to breweries and drink all the 64-ounce growlers I can. Now, the funny thing is, y'all know me. I put a stopper in a bomber. I can't
drink
drink
2
that.
days to drink a bomber, yeah.
I thought it was 12-ounce bottles.
Well, it depends on how heavy it is. A heavy one may be a 12-ounce, but like I have a bomber over here that I started last night. I can't even drink a 32-ounce growler. That's why, I mean, I've kind of been quiet about this issue in Florida because it doesn't really affect me because I just don't drink that much, and I don't know that many people would drink with me. But a lot of people in Florida are happy because we now are allowed to drink 64-ounce growlers, and the breweries are allowed to sell them. So that's very exciting, and on July 1st, a lot of breweries are going to be celebrating. The thing is, I have to find a growler, though, because the article that I read from the Tampa Tribune, some of the people are thinking that there might be a shortage of growlers.
Of course.
Well, and that's funny because I don't want to go on July 1st and not have a growler. Oh, my God, how tacky would that be?
What you could do, Lola, is just buy one from a non-Florida brewery. Like, buy one off the website of Firestone. Do you guys sell growlers on the website? Yeah.
I don't think we do, actually.
Oh, well.
Well, you got to start.
Get David to send you one from his office.
All right. They have my address. But you know what? You can make some money off of this because a lot of people in Florida are going to be wanting 64-ounce growlers, and we're going to run out. So you might want to start reaching out to Florida people and saying, we got your growler. Come on, we'll get you a growler.
You say that too, Lola, but do they fill other breweries' growlers? I know a lot of states are kind of have rules and laws against not
we don't fill other people's growlers.
Say that again?
We don't fill other people's growlers at our brewery. I mean, we'll actually give you one of our growlers and take as at a great discount, but it's just easier to trust your own growler.
Yeah. Well, David, to give you a little bit of insight, what happened in Florida, where Lola is.
Oh, you're talking facts. I was just talking out my butt, but okay.
Well, the situation in Florida was that the legislation in Florida is, I don't know, you probably know, but
whack.
It's crazy, archaic, and they could sell 32-ounce growlers
and more than a gallon. They could sell 128-gallon growlers.
Ounce
growlers, but not the one in the middle, which made no sense. And of course, I always thought that was silly. I mean, they say it was because they don't want people drinking that much when they're going home, but I'm like, you can get a 128-ounce growler? That doesn't make any sense. But the bill was passed. Senate Bill 0186 was passed. And so as of July 1st, we'll be able to get 64-ounce growlers. But it also did a lot more stuff. I've actually got the bill up, and it's really long, and it made my eyes bleed when I tried to read it. But another thing it does is we've had tapping bars here, tapping rooms here, but it was kind of protected under some kind of like Disney law. And some people have been challenging that. But this law actually states that it's okay for breweries to have a tapping room, so it's kind of secured that. So that's a good thing. I'm very happy about that.
Was it a Disney law or was it a Busch Gardens law?
You're right, it's Busch Gardens. You and your facts, Randy Gardner Jr. Just interrupting with your facts.
Keep you honest.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I'm making up stories here. Huh?
So, Dave, talking about the vessels, you guys have been really aggressive on cans the last couple of years. I've seen more and more your cans on the East Coast.
Yeah. Well, you probably don't need me to explain the benefits of cans for craft beer. The flavor is so much more preserved, especially if you're making hop-forward beers. They're easier to ship, and they're just better all around. They're easier to recycle. In fact, our canning line now is much larger than our bottling line, and we're desperately trying, not desperately, but we're trying to educate our markets as to the benefits of cans. And ironically, of course, California is not as forward on cans as some other markets, but our hope is that we can slowly change that. Yeah, I mean, we love cans.
We're having comments here and say parabolas on cans. Is that possible?
We joke about that. That would be fascinating.
It would.
Yeah.
Well, David, the next article that we had was actually about kind of about big beer, and they spoke about how SAB Miller just bought Meantime Brewing, which I'm sure you're aware of.
In London.
And it's basically about how, I guess, essentially the big guys are trying to encroach upon craft beer. I mean, we've seen it in 4 other cases before where AB InBev has bought craft breweries here, and now we got SAB Miller getting into the game, trying to encroach. I mean, what are your views upon how this is impacting craft beer in its current state and its future state?
Well, it's not only big breweries. There's a lot of private equity money have come in and bought craft brewers. You'll never know that, but they're now run by bankers, or at least bankers are calling the shots.
But do you think do you think investment money is as bad as big? If you think it's it's as bad as big brewers? They don't understand anything.
Yeah, I think it's worse. Actually, I think it's worse. I think. I'll probably get beaten up for this, but private equity, I mean, those guys are on a short fuse. I mean, they borrow money from someone and invest it in an enterprise, and then they've got 6 to 7 years to return that money at a profit. So they're going to do whatever they can to either blow the business up and then sell it again, listen, I don't, I'm a free economy, free enterprise guy. I don't have any problem with people doing that, but it gets in the way of, maybe some of the principles of the original concept of an artisanal brewery. That said, there are some investors out there who are probably more diligent and will really help brewers get to the next level. I think in terms of the big brewer initiatives, I mean, the big brewers, I think, are buying breweries at the moment because they're genuinely, they're at their wits' end. I mean, it's like, okay, we tried. I mean, if you look at the arc of the big brewers, and 15 years ago they tried to stop craft brewers from getting into distribution, and I won't bore you with how they did it, but they did a really good job. Well, that didn't work. They then try to sort of create brands that are supposed to look like craft beer, but they're sort of brewed by them. That didn't work either. And you probably don't remember Red Dog and Deer Mountain and Lake Mountain or whatever they were. I mean, there was a whole series of them. And then they get closer. I mean, they start. Then we get to sort of Blue Moon and Shock Top, which are very popular brands, and they challenge the palate a little bit more than a light lager. But ultimately, I think they said to themselves, okay, now we get it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to buy a whole a nice little community of craft brewers and develop them, just like we own imports, just like we own anything else. And so I see that happening, and to a certain extent. It remains to be seen how it works. I mean, 10 Barrel make beautiful beers, and Anheuser-Busch ABI bought 10 Barrel. I mean, they make interesting beers. Brewer there's killer, and I can't see how they're going to change that. I mean, it's way too small for them to sort of change. So. Who knows?
Yeah, this particular news was on CNN London Money, actually, because I mean many Americans might not be so familiar with Meantime, but their Meantime lager is a big thing in UK, right? Because the industry in UK kind of shrunk a little bit. While they just grow a little under 2%, they almost grow 50% in the last couple of years. So it's a pretty upcoming brewery.
But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
My sense is if it changes, if it makes for better beer, then great. I mean, the fact is, if you go to St. Louis and you walk through their brewery there, it's an amazing brewery. Their brewers are as well qualified, and in many cases far more qualified than some of the brewers in the craft sector. Their labs, we would die for their labs and their equipment. So I mean their beers, they might not agree with your palate, but they're clean beers, they're beautifully controlled, and they're duplicated in whatever it is, a dozen breweries around the country. So they understand brew culture. They're just playing a different song, and I mean they're perfectly capable of, frankly, they're perfectly capable of brewing Easy Jack. It's just they're not doing it.
Well, art's not a perfect art, right? I mean, they can brew a beer to perfection on their style, but that doesn't mean that is an art. An art is something. There's more than just perfection. There's soul. There's love. There's a bunch of things that is involved when it comes to art. And I think for me, those things that I love about craft beer is it's an art. It's something that is just intangible. You can't just put your finger on what makes it so great.
It's not perfect.
Talent. It's talent too.
Yeah, I mean, talent without question. You're right. And listen, either way, I think the big brewers are probably pretty happy with the craft beer movement, because what it's doing is it's reawakening people's interest in beer culture. And the biggest threat to the big brewers is all of the new drinkers go drink wine and liquor. And forget all about beer because it was tasteless. And what they're discovering is, hang on a second, the next generation of consumers are intelligent. They've got different palates, and we've got to find a way to meet that. So,
and just to drive your point home about them being at their wits' end. I mean, not to dig this story back up, but it's that point in itself is evident in the Super Bowl commercial, right? That was a completely unprovoked attack on craft beer that absolutely came out of left field, and I think that melds with your point that they're at their wits' end and they're trying to stop losing market share. So I think you were spot on with that.
And I will also say this: you can have beer that uses alcohol, such as whiskey and rum and other things, and uses wine barrels. So beer is actually compatible with all sorts of other alcohol beverages, whereas we run the gamut.
Yeah, one thing I was surprised. You all know how I feel about big craft brewing, and my reasons for it is have nothing to do with the product. It has to do with what they do business. But I was very surprised that on the SAB Miller, their goal is they're looking for the female crowd, which is kind of I think it's the first big brewery that I've seen really targeting women, which seems to me that they most walk away from that. It's kind of a
approach.
I don't, I'm biased. I'm the father of 3 daughters, but I mean I don't know why you wouldn't be really interested in women from a brewer standpoint.
Exactly.
As long as there's nothing in your logo about saying no or taking no out of it, we don't want that. Do you know what I'm talking about? The take no out of or whatever. Was it Budweiser?
That was a Bud Light thing. Yeah, but I think I just hope that you can attract women by making interesting beers and making the marketing approachable to them, because you look at Ashley here and she wants to drink an English ale. She doesn't need Bud Light Apple or Bud Light Lime to make but that's Anheuser-Busch, their marketing approach is, well, we need to make beer for women, so let's stick fruit in it, and that's going to make it appealing to them. So I don't know, that's kind of disgusting. I guess that's a whole another hour-long conversation.
All I would say to you in sort of summation on my side, I think this evolution, this revolution that we're going through, will leave a profound impact on the larger international brewers. And I think it will change the way they think. And that will ultimately be beneficial for everybody. So I don't think you can sit around and watch the craft beer movement and not be influenced by it.
Yeah.
And as a woman, I'm drinking a 13% ABV rye whiskey ale.
So it won't be long until we see Bud IPA, So.
I want to drink it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, well, let's wrap this up with talking about some beer releases. These guys, looks like David's got Sticky Monkey 2015 coming out here in the next, tomorrow, the day after?
Yeah, absolutely. It's in fact, we pushed it off a week, but it's here. Yeah, it's ready to roll.
I need that in my life.
Yeah, that's a Belgian quad aged over a year in Woodford Reserve Elijah Craig and Four Roses bourbon barrels. So that's a big commitment. We know where the barrel room is.
You have a collab. What's that with the Italian brewery? You can La Piccola. What was that beer that you guys are making?
Italiano Verifico.
When is that coming out?
We're releasing that at our Invitational Festival next Saturday.
So, Gil, you won't be getting any.
Yeah.
I got the message.
Stone and Escondido, they've actually got another Stochasticity. This is Hi-Fi and Lo-Fi mixtape. It's an American strong ale. It's a one-off that comes out Monday. Was the last one Master? Was there one after Master Disguise?
Master of Disguise.
Master of Disguise is the last one.
All right, so this one's coming out. Jester King and Off Color have a collaboration called Radiolaria, American Wild Ale. It's a farmhouse ale, which I think is what Off Color really. Well, I think both of them do a lot of size.
Yeah.
Well, do you know because of the laws in Texas, Jester King won't be able to sell that beer in Texas.
Why?
Because they went to Illinois to brew it.
That's silly.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, Chicago will buy it all up. Yeah. Victory down in Pennsylvania has got Sour Monkey Belgian style Tripel, incorporating multiple fermentations with 3 different yeasts. That is just out. Westbrook has got Mexican. Wow, it's Mexican cake time already. Seems like
It
was.
was.
Were there a bunch of variations on that this year too?
Maybe at the brewery, but not. It wasn't anything like last year.
All right. Well, it sold out and it's tap only. It came out today and it sold out today, I guess. Brewdog has got their Born to Die 4-7. Is that right, Gil?
Yeah, it's today. Oh no, maybe wrong. It's today.
Okay, so 521. There's a 521. That's their answer to.
No, the 407/2015 is the date by you had to drink.
So you had to drink it by last month?
Y'all are confusing me. What's
4-7
going on?
is April. So maybe.
Oh yeah. Well, no. That's the name of the brewery. It's Born to Die 4/7/2015. They're in UK, so the date comes before the month
first. All right.
So
So
July
by the
4th.
4th of July.
July. You should have just said July 4th.
Yeah. Well, if you're
They
in the military.
well, that's the name of the beer, and they do the right way across the pond.
If you're in the military, they say 4 July 2015. So, Terrapin has got Maggie's Blackberry Cobbler Imperial Farmhouse Ale brewed with graham crackers.
Wow.
What?
Good
God.
That is like somebody was high and said, "I want to put all of this in a beer, man." It would be
And they
so
probably just crushed it up and put it in there. That's what I would do. I'd be like, let's just put it in there.
No, that's not their first beer with graham crackers. And actually, the last two beers were actually really excellent.
Somebody's really into s'mores. Avery has got Samuel. Is that Samuel?
Samuel.
Samuel. Each batch number 11. That's a big old English barley wine, 16.9% ish. Comes out tomorrow. What other releases have you guys heard of that we don't have on the list?
I got nothing.
All right, festivals. American Craft Beer Fest in Seaport World Center in Boston. That's the 29th and the 30th. Chicago's Craft Beer Week started on the 14th and wrapped up on the 24th. Nevada Beer Week is the 18th through the 30th. That's in Las Vegas and Reno. Albuquerque's Beer Week is on now, going through the 31st. That's Albuquerque, New Mexico. Central Oregon Beer Week in several venues in Oregon, the 22nd to the 31st. Asheville's Beer Week is the 22nd through the 30th, and the Great Alaska Craft Beer and Homebrew Festival is the 22nd and the 23rd. That's in Haines, Alaska. So I think beer weeks really are the big thing right now, aren't they? Ashley, you just did one. Was it pretty successful?
It was amazingly successful.
Yeah, so I guess that's really a way to highlight and kind of share the love all around a town or an area. So I can imagine Asheville's Beer Week is going to be just nuts with all the beer and beer.
You can't drink it the whole week if you don't start on Monday, right?
Yeah, that's right. You can't drink all week if you don't start early. So, well, that is our show for this evening. We really appreciate, David, you taking some time out of your evening and fighting the technical challenges that we're getting your computer logged into the Hangout tonight.
I'm a moron. I apologize. So.
No, I think it's Apple and Google don't play well together. That's the summation of our entire technical experience. So.
I have a brand new Windows computer, and I couldn't get my lower to third to come up until I turned my camera off.
That's that's probably not helping the cause, Lola. So, but
well, sorry. Truth is truth.
But David did survive another year of life. His birthday was yesterday, so you've got his email address. It's you don't want me to give that out on the air? All right. So we'll just wish David a happy birthday for you, and thanks for your time this evening. Thanks everybody on the panel. Until next week, everybody, find some good friends, find some great craft beer, and mind those P's and Q's.
See you guys.
Cheers.
It's all right.